right. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you're from. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Today we are going to do a workflow-based webinar for concrete pour sequencing, and this will be we will be highlighting a tool that we have called Fab Sheets, which is from the BIM project suite. So with let's kind of get going. So one of a big drawback or something that's missing from Revit is the speed in which we can set up drawings for concrete pours or for spool sheets or for basically to assist with the procurement or installation of items, right? So in this case, we are focusing on concrete pouring and how we can go about setting up a handful of different templates, couple parameters, some schedules, and utilize this tool to assist us with setting up the selections and creating the different views in the sheets so that we can go ahead and create our pour book of scent, right? So we can have our document set that kind of guides the contractors through the process here. So so today I'm going to teach you how to get this all set up and kind of sort of show you what the end outcome is, right? Obviously, the more work you put into it, the more detailed everything's going to be. I'm just using a sample file that I've come across. So, but today what we're going to do is we're going to set up a bunch of view templates and that can be used to adjust the graphics, what model elements are showing, how much of the building is actually being visible in it. Then we will set up Fab Sheets to hopefully do a lot of this for us, right? And we can create some settings files that we can load up so we're not repeating the same thing over and over again. And then watch the tool kind of do the work for us in a sense. There is a little bit of pre-work that needs to happen. So I've kind of tried to show some of that here before I jump into the demo. So there are three kind of key areas that we've worked with. So there's the settings tab here where we need to create a parameter that allows us to kind of create this sequence number or increment number in a sense, so that we know what order in the sequence it's falling into. And then we have our graphic options. So all of our different view templates for the floor plan, elevation, section, 3D, sheet properties, some type of material takeoff schedule that you want to use. Maybe you want to figure out how much concrete is being used in that set. And then you have additional graphic overrides that we can go ahead and control the visibility of the previous sequence or the upcoming sequence, or increment, I should say, sorry. So, and then on the next set is where we go ahead and set up the sequence and increments themselves. So you go through, if you're doing footings or slabs or walls or columns and beams, right? You create those increments, the sequence and the increments for them, create the views, assign the elements to a particular increment, and then move on to the next phase. So this kind of area here is how we are applying the settings to a grouping of elements in our model. And then finally, after we've got the increments defined and we've got, say footings F001 through whatever, and we need to get a scope box for them so we know to help us define the viewport or the views extents, and then we can create all of these views. So plan views or structural plan views if you want to go that route, the various elevations, sections, 3D views, a material takeoff schedule specifically, or just a standard schedule, and then the sheets. So, and the tool will create all that for you. It'll create the sheet. It'll put the views on the sheet. So there's a lot of automation that's happening here. So a lot of the work that we're doing is just the setup. the tool will do the rest. So kind of with that being said here, we'll just kind of get into it and I'll walk you through how this is all going to work, okay? So let's just get to Revit. Oh, look at me, I've already got it open. So this is kind of from the slides here where you see everything that kind of went into this. So we'll just kind of pick up from there. So what I had to do first is specify a parameter for sequence number. Okay, so this gets attached to however many objects you want to do this with, and it needs to be a shared parameter, effectively is what it ends up being. But so you could have one pre-created and pick it from the list, or you can take advantage of the program and let the tool do it for you. So I actually did that myself. I hit create parameter and called it sequence number. You can call it whatever you want. It's up to you. And then after that, you go ahead and kind of define some naming convention for the increments. So down here, you can choose one of two different ways. You can do the sequence name or number first, and then the increment name or number, whatever you define it as, or you can flip that. Increment first, sequence second. For sorting purposes, I like throwing a sequence at the beginning there, and I chose to use an underscore for my separator instead of a hyphen, but you could choose a hyphen here if you'd like. Then you have all of your templates. So which templates do you want to use? So I went ahead and created a few to start with. So I've got, and this is just so I had better control of what's visible within some of these views. I set it up so that each category that I was going to be running through had its own set of templates. So beams has its own, columns has its own, foundations, and then slabs and walls, right? So they have their own thing. You don't have to do it that way. You can, use fewer templates if you'd like. I chose to go probably with a longer route here. So what I'll do here is I'm gonna see, I did footings already. So let's say we do, we'll just do columns, I guess. We'll do columns plan, and then elevation. And since elevations and sections in Revit terms are the same thing, I'm gonna go ahead and just use that. And for my 3D view, I'll choose columns here. I have a material takeoff schedule predefined already. And then I wanna go ahead and use my title block in my viewports. For the graphic overrides here, we have the ability to show the preceding or following elements with overridden line work, but that's it. Like, we can't change the color of it. I can't change the pattern. All I can do is change what the line pattern or weight is. So I chose to actually turn them off. To me, I thought it would be better if they were just disabled. So that's what I did. I just shut them off completely. And then you can do additional overrides to the current increment if that helps. It helps you guys make it so that it's easier to see what's going on. And I might have done that had I had preceding and following elements still visible. So like if I did do this, I'd say visible, and then maybe I would have done some type of a dashed line with a pen weight of 1, for example, or even just a pen weight of 1, so it's super thin. And then maybe here I would have bumped up the weight a little bit here to like a 4 or 5, just so you see it a little bit better. But in this case, I'm not doing that at all. So hit OK, and then we can move on to the next step, sequence management. So here is where we set up the sequence and the various increments that are going to be going through. So in this case, I've already got a handful of them set up. And since we're doing columns, I will go ahead, and I haven't set anything else up yet. So I'll just remove this one altogether and do it with you. And basically the way it works is you create the sequence, and then you create the individual increments to go along with it. So in this case, I'll hit add sequence, We'll call it columns and hit OK. And then with it selected, I'm going to add the increments. And increments, you know, and these can all be labeled differently. Like I did it by category in Revit. You could have done day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 if you wanted to go that route. Or, you know, again, by category like this, and then within the increment, it could have been day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, right? So, or you could specify grid intersections, or, you know, whatever allows you, whatever works for you and makes it easier for you guys to understand and your team members to understand, is how I would go ahead and set this up. For ease of use, I did columns and just C001, and you can enter it all in right now. So C002, 3, 4, and I'm just going to go up to 10 to make it quick. Okay, and then you hit OK, boom, it creates the list. And now we get to define the colors, right? And the reason why we get to define colors is that the program Fab Sheets will go ahead and apply a filter to the views so that when you are adding objects to an increment, it'll automatically put this color assignment to them so that you know what's happening. So you know that's already been assigned to something. You can find out maybe it was assigned to the wrong increment, or you want to change something, it's easy to tell the difference between them. So for this, I'm gonna grab and I'm gonna do assign random colors. That's not a very good assignment, so I'm gonna go ahead and just keep clicking it, assign random, until I get something that's acceptable for me. And if you've got a standard set of colors that you want to use, you can just grab one individually and hit assign color and pick your own color, right? So I'm just going to keep going until I one more. Okay, it is what it is. So now at this point, I want to go ahead and start getting some of this into my project here. So what I'm going to do now is, with columns selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit create update selection views. And what this is going to do is it's going to create some selection views so that I can go ahead and, with the filters applied, so that I can go ahead and start working on some stuff. And it defaulted me back to my footings one from earlier. So I'm going to jump to my 3D view one for columns. And I'm actually going to go back here and do a little bit of extra setup here. So I'm going to turn some things off so it's easier to see. I don't need to see all these extra scope boxes. So I'm just going to turn all of this off for right now. All right. So here we go. I've got my columns here. And now what we get to do is assign the items to an increment. So for example, I'll grab the first one in the line, C001, and I'll hit assign to elements. And then I get to go ahead and just start picking stuff. And you notice I have pretty much full range of the model. I can do pretty much whatever I need to here. So I can go ahead and grab as many as are needed, as required for this. So I'll just grab those first 4. And then back here, there's a finish button that'll appear. Boom. And then the color automatically gets applied. And then I'll move on to the next one and go ahead and do that. So I'll go ahead and grab number 2. And I don't know how many we're getting done in a day, so I'm just gonna grab some. And you can do it based on how many you're gonna get done in a day, or you could do it, each individual column gets its own piece. It's entirely up to you guys how you set this up. You have full range of flexibility with the naming, with the selections and the assignments. It's entirely up to you how detailed you want to go with it. And I'm gonna do another one just for having a few here. I forgot to unjoin my columns so they look weird. Oops. All right, we'll hit finish and we'll call it good on that one for right now. Okay, so now I've got some stuff assigned here. And so the next step here is to go ahead and start getting the view start getting the view creation going. So I've got, oh, they're in here somewhere. They're not in order, so there we go. So now my 3 increments that I actually did define now show up in the list. So there's a couple other things that need to happen here. First, I need to get a scope box defined for these items, right? And the reason why we need the scope box is because we need to be able to define the size, both in plan and elevation of the viewport, right? And we want that to be consistent across the board. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab these 3 and hit create scope box. And it's gonna create a scope box. And in this case, it as I have them turned off, so I'm gonna go back and turn them on real quick here. And you're gonna see a bunch because I did them for another set already, right? So I'm gonna have to go ahead and find these guys, but this should be right here. So this should be the first one. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this. Yep, here's the first one. And you can go ahead and orient your scope boxes however you need to, right? So these are clearly way too large. So I'm gonna switch to an elevated view here. Pull these up, pull this down, pull it in on this side, and then pull it in over here. It's up to you if you guys want some overlap to this so that you can see the, the following increments or the preceding increments, kind of like with match lines and area plans. So it's up to you if you want to show that much information. If you want to keep it nice and tight and kind of maximize what you got going on, it's up to you. So, and then I'm going to switch back to the top view here, make sure I get it all in. Perfect. On to the next piece. So I believe that's this guy. So we can go ahead and that's the same color. Do that there. Pull this in this way, pull it in this way. And on to the last one, which should be this one. It is. And I'm not going to worry about overlapping them with this one. I did with my footings. As you can see, these other scope boxes out here are for the foundations that I did earlier. And that's just so that we could, just as another example. And I'll show you some of those sets and how they turned out as well. All right, so now that I've got those, well, I guess I didn't really worry about the elevation too much on those, did I? Suppose I should. Where did they? Well, and maybe I won't because I can't find them. So that's all right. I'm not terribly worried about, oh, there we go, we got one. So sure, good enough. I'm not gonna worry about it. So back to the Fab Sheets window. So now we've got our scope boxes sized up for these 3. And now I get to go through and start picking and generating the views. So we already went through and made sure that we had the templates assigned and the sheets, the title block, and the viewports that we want to use. Now we get to go and say, I need views created. So to make it go quick, I'm just going to choose the first one here. And you get to choose between either a regular plan view or a structural plan view, right? And that just changes kind of what the default, or what the default disciplines are, where things are, how things may be grouped in your browser, depending on what organization methods you're using. In this case, I'm just going to leave it with plan view because that's how I've kind of set things up. With elevation views, you can choose how many, if any, you want created with this. In this case, I'm not going to create an elevation view, but I am going to do the sections. Then choose, and I'm just going to do one of each. 3D views here. Do I want one for the sequence view and one for the increment view, or just the increment view? I've already got some 3D views generated for the overall sequences, so I'm not going to create another one for this. That happened on the first view generation that we did. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and create one for my increments. And I'm going to do a material takeoff schedule for this as well. You can do another specific schedule for the category or for the items that you're using. I just have to make sure that I have that specific ones defined here on the front end for the template. But in this case, I'm doing the material or the material takeoff. So I'm going to use that schedule. And then in this case, I'm not going to create the sheet yet, but you could. You could create that right out of the gate if you wanted to. And then in this case, what I'll do is I'm going to do it two different ways here. I'm going to duplicate and apply. Well, actually, in this case, I'm not going to duplicate and apply the filters. I'm just going to let it apply the filters and use the templates that I've already got. And I'll explain why here in a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. So in the background, the program's creating all the different views that we had selected for us, and creating and not creating a sheet, but it's creating all the views, right? So if I go back over here to my browser, I now have a columns 3D view here for that increment. I should also have a columns plan view up under here under fabrication. It's what the template's telling it to do, so that's where it's going to be. I should also have, yep. So it gave me my two sections that I have here, and you can see I've got all the ones for the foundations already done. And if I keep going down even further into my schedules here, I should have a columns material takeoff schedule. Okay, so everything happened the way I expected it to. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit create sheet on the columns again and create an update. So if any changes have been made, it'll update them, the views that were already created. All it's really doing in this case is generating the sheet view for me and putting these views on that sheet. So if I go down here, I now have my columns sheet, open that up, and it placed the views for me. Now, granted, it's putting them all in the corner, and one of the updates that we have coming up in the future is to give us the ability to lay these out a little bit better. So instead of it just throwing it at 0, 0, like it's currently doing, let us choose the layout here. So what section? We got a section here. I've got the plan here, so I'll put that up top. Where is this? I've got another, which one is that? Oh, that's my 3D view, so I'm gonna put that here for now. Got my sections, and well, I must have accidentally unchecked my schedule, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring that in. And the schedules I just did, show me the different materials maybe that are being used and the volume, right? Nothing spectacular here. So then let's see here. That 3D view. Oh yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the angle of that view and then bring it back, since it's doing it based off the origin and it's not a camera, so I can't create kind of a scope or a cut plane or a viewport for it. So so there's the sheet, right? If I can show you some of the other ones that I did earlier. So for my footings, oh, I didn't finish laying that one out. Huh. But here's, increment 2. Looked okay. I mean, I don't have any annotations on it, so I haven't gone through and finalized the additional documentation, and I didn't put any rebar in here because I didn't want to have us sitting here waiting forever for things to populate. But yeah, you get the idea. So the whole point is to get everything together. Now, and it may take you a little bit to get it to come out the way you want. So, this took me, I've got other sections that I don't want to show. So I would have made specific section types or elevation types that are specific to the sequence or fabrication or however you want to call them, and then set up additional filters so that those, my typical building sections and wall sections or elevations, they don't show up. Only the appropriate ones do, right? I don't want everything under the sun to be here. So yeah, so that's what I've got going on. And now to get back to why, let's go back. Where did it go? Fab Sheets. Here we are. So now, as far as checking or unchecking the duplicate and apply filters. So the reason why I didn't do it on this run is because I already had, I've got my templates already figured out and I'm happy with the way they look. If you did say duplicate and apply filters to the templates, what it does is it creates a template for each increment that you create. So if last time I went through and created all 30 of these at the same time. So now in my view templates dialog box, I have, come on, there we go. I have 30, well, more than that. I've got 90 additional templates in here for those. But that then gives me the ability to I have control over each one of those individually, right? So you probably don't need to take it to that far, but there is the option to do that if you choose to. In this case, with the columns, I'm going to choose not to do that, and I'm just going to grab these other two, and I'm going to do the views and the sheet at the same time, and just let it run. And I'm only creating five views, so it goes relatively quick. And the more information that you have visible, the longer it's going to take. So you can, but I'm doing this with pretty lightweight objects, so it's going pretty quick, which is nice. And now I can go back down. Oh, no, I did want to go down here. So I got the other sheets in here now. And grab this guy. Which one is this? There's my 3D view again. Here's a section. Here's the plan. Here's another section. And here's my schedule. So not bad, works pretty well. So now that I'm happy with what I've got, I'm going to save these settings. So in the Fab Sheets window here, on the very first tab, you can save these. So once you've got it set the way you want, save it. Now, and again, it's only remembering really the sequence info, the increment info. If you're using it on the same project, it'll remember the templates and all the good stuff that you set, but really what you're saving is the scale definitions here, title block and the viewport type, hopefully are standardized and will be good to go. If you do end up standardizing your view templates, they'll be good to go. Graphic overrides if you choose to use them. It's remembering that stuff. And it will remember, so that's the stuff you want to save. So if you do your save as, I just called it concrete pours. It can be it for a particular job if you want. It can be for a particular region if you want. It can be for a particular contractor if you want. It all depends on how you want to put it all together. And that's what you get to do. So in this case, I'm just going to call it, I'm just going to overwrite my previous settings. Yes. So now you've got them. So then if you were to start a new project, you just fire up Fab Sheets and hit load. It'll pull it up and you'll get some messages about it. And actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and do it for you. So if I start a new project, and again, I'm not using it with like a company template or anything. So none of the stuff that I previously set up of the templates and schedules will show up, but this is what you can expect to see for the most part. If I hit load, it'll remember everything. I have to add the parameter to the project, so it's not there. Oh, gotta create. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. and we'll do sequence number. Yep. So it did what I told it to do. So remember the last settings I did for the checkboxes here. It remembered the increment info, the scales that I had picked, would have remembered templates had I used an actual template for this. So, and it would have remembered all of this had actually, it remembered that I changed that to a pen weight 1. So it's doing what I told it to. And as much as it can be expected to do, considering I don't have a template defined. So yeah, you know, and I didn't want to sit here and take you through the process of waiting for 25 different increments to go off, and had I gone through and set it up completely, I'd probably have over 400 different increments to go through. So I didn't want to go through and make you sit there and twiddle your thumbs while we did that. So, but when I did those 30 foundation elements there, switch back again, in that previous project, that took about, I want to say, it took about 10 minutes to process all of the views and all of the sheets for this. So it's pretty quick. Doesn't take that long. I actually spent more time tinkering with the view templates than I did creating the sheets. So it's fairly quick. And once you have this information put into your template, get your settings file, it's going to be pretty smooth sailing. And there'll be a handful of new features that we're working towards in the spring regarding this to make it even easier and give you more control over the output here. So, so I didn't really get into much about how to get it or anything like that. So I'm going to do that real quick too. This tool is a part of the BIM project suite. It's one of our kind of our typical, the most popular one. And it's this first one in the dark green tools here. It's the Fab Sheets. If you guys don't have BIM project suite already, you can access it from our website. That's CTC Software.com. And if you go to our products page and click on BIM Project Suite, you see you can get yourself a trial for 14 days. It's a fully functioning trial for those 2 weeks, so you can go ahead and do anything that you want and save the work. And then after that, it just becomes everything will lock out at that point, except for the free tools that are already there. So anything in this free tools drop down, you'll have access to for life. So, so yeah, with that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions at this point. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions panel. Be happy to answer them if they come in. Otherwise, thank you for your time. I do appreciate you guys joining us today, and hope you all have a wonderful week. Thanks.